This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Bruschi.
Anne Bremner joining us. She's one of the nation's most recognized legal analysts. And we're going to talk a little bit of Lori Daybell. Just recently, death penalty being taken off of the table for Lori. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Is this something that was done because procedurally it's taken a while for her to get to court? Was this something that was done in that vein, or was it more in the vein of let's do this for the jury so there's less pressure on them if they convict her of a possibility of sending someone to death?
No, it's really the former, but what it was the judge, he heard a number of different arguments from the defense on why the death penalty should be thrown out, that she has mental health issues, that it's a firing squad, and potentially they could be involved and shouldn't be with a mentally ill and or person or female. And then they made arguments, about the general constitutionality arguments that we see. But what they basically hooked the judge on was that they said the prosecutor had been late in disclosing certain evidence. And the evidence was just disclosed, whatever it was, March 13th. And with the trial date of April the 3rd, that disclosure was so late that it could prejudice her right to a fair trial. And he said, if as a death penalty case, there'll be far more scrutiny and the likelihood, of a reversal is there. And so, in fairness, he decided to let the death penalty go.
So it was kind of almost a bartering, if you will, where the state was slow on it, and in turn, we won't kill you if we find you guilty in this case that you're very likely to be found guilty on.
Yeah, it seems that way. Frankly, I think that when the state makes a decision to seek the death penalty and they have an adequate basis to do that, a judge, I think, should be loath to interfere with that decision, unless there's a real significant issue, because it's really up to the people on the jury and owed to the people of the state of Idaho for the case to play out, rather than have a judge say, well, I didn't find that there was an intentional non-disclosure. I didn't find misconduct on the part of the prosecution, but I'm still going to throw out the death penalty. Well, it seems to me that's quite a sanction against the state. And you usually don't mete out sanctions unless there's misconduct.
How much does death penalty influence a jury, in your opinion, when that is on the table and they have to go and make their decision to either convict or not convict? How frequently do you see it where the evidence is there, but if the death penalty weren't on the table, they would be convicted? But when it is there, maybe they change their mind and they're just a little more cautious on the conviction.
Well, I think the classic example is Casey Anthony. I mean, I think that was a death penalty case, and that I think that fact weighed heavily on the decision, and even if it was conscious or not conscious on the part of the jury, to acquit her, because it was just such a serious case that's what makes the burden on the state in some ways higher. When you're dealing with the death penalty, the burden is higher on the underlying guilt phase.
As an attorney, when you have that being out there, that being an option, whether you're on the defense or prosecuting it, what kind of extra pressure does that put on you as a person? Have you ever prosecuted a death penalty case or defended one?
No. When I was in the prosecutor's office, we had two lawyers that handled all of our death penalty cases. So that they were experts, and they were the only ones that did the death cases when I was there. The rest of us didn't. And frankly, I'd hate to have a death penalty case on either side. That's pretty weighty stuff. To have somebody's life in your hands.
Yeah.
And so, but the two lawyers that we had, that they did all of our death cases.
What does this mean for Chad Daybell and his future, and what may be on the table for penalties with him?
Well, you can bet his lawyer's going to come in and say, if she's not getting a death penalty, and that same evidence wasn't disclosed in her case. I'm assuming it's both cases. We don't have enough information, but I'm assuming there's a late disclosure that related to him too. Then they've got a pretty good argument to say he shouldn't get the death penalty either. Idaho that's a death penalty state. I'm right here in Washington. We have death by hanging, although there's kind of a moratorium in Washington. But in Utah, they're looking at bringing in the firing squad, or excuse me, Idaho, and they don't mess around in Idaho or Utah for that matter in terms of these cases. That's why I was surprised the judge made what was a pretty unpopular decision, and one that I don't think is well grounded in throwing out the death penalty.
Yeah. And if they were to make this argument in Chad's case, he already has elected, though, to waive his right to a speedy trial. We don't even know when his trial date is going to be. So
That's true.
So the argument that was made for Lori of, well, it's coming up so quick, we'll make this concession. It's not the same concession that would be made in Chad's case.
That's right. I mean, and because sometimes on late disclosure, the remedy is a continuance. You say, I can't get ready. Okay, continuance is going to remedy that, and you're not prejudiced. So, let's go ahead and, just give it some more time. But when she's not waived speedy trial, which was smart in this case, that there was no remedy of a continuance.
What, just your opinion as we're getting super close to the date, less than 2 weeks away from this trial starting up, what do you think we're going to see from the defense of Lori Daybell? I think it's easy to see what the prosecution's going to be bringing forward. All that's been laid out, I think, in the media. But what kind of defense do you think we're going to see for her?
Why, that's kind of difficult to say because we've just seen so many aspects of her position, i.e., is she joined with Chad, in any way? We know she wanted to see him, all that kind of thing. Or is she going to say he did everything? I didn't do anything. Is she going to see I, mental problems? I was found incompetent. And, and then, of course, I'm back in, presumably competent, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a mental defense. I mean, I think the reason she's incompetent is because she believed all this stuff that was kind of crazy that Chad was espousing. So it's hard to say, but, she's kind of crazy like a fox. I mean, that one, she seems to be doing all right so far as I can tell.
This is an examination of the hidden human condition.
This is the Hidden Killers Podcast.
The Hidden Killers Podcast.
With Tony Bruschi.
One of the nation's most recognized legal analysts right there, Anne Bremner. Thank you so much for your insights onto that piece of the puzzle as we get closer and closer to the trial of Lori Daybell. Of course, we'll have all the coverage for you right here. If you want a channel that specifically is focused on the Daybells, we have that for you as well. Just search Demise of the Daybells where we get podcasts, and you'll find our channel over there where it's all Daybells all the time. It's like also known as the seventh layer of hell. My name is Tony Bruschi. You can find me on Twitter at TonyBPod. Stay with us.